everyone, and welcome back to Venus Pages. Today we're talking about Holy Sonnet VI. This is my play's last scene. This is another poem on the Edexcel A level English literature John Donne list. So, as usual, let's start with a summary and then move on to the line-by-line analysis. This particular sonnet feels like almost something that Shakespeare would write. It feels more like a soliloquy, a dramatic monologue rather than a holy sonnet, rather than an addressal or like a poem meant for God, because it's concerned primarily, well, again with death, much like many of the other holy sonnets, as Donne is at that sort of stage in his life towards self-reflection. So you will see this be a recurrent theme in this series. We have this conceit of a play and the last kind of act of the play, and the person delivering the speech, this like last player, is wondering about what will become after the play, after that final scene, about the entr'acte that will happen, that pause in the play, if you will. The speaker, the actor, ruminates on what it would be like to meet God, and he reflects on his life and he views himself with inadequacy. He's filled with anxiety and fear and nervousness that, oh, maybe God won't like me, maybe this meeting won't go well. And contextually, it's also interesting to consider why Donne might choose the conceit of a stage, why he might view like an actor as the key player here. It suggests that perhaps he viewed himself as an actor, as someone who's just playing a role, someone who's fake, someone who's wearing a mask because he felt inadequate at the thought that maybe I don't belong here with my Catholic upbringing in a Protestant society, and certainly not in the position of the Dean of St. Paul's Cathedral, but really the king insisted, so how can I refuse? So it suggests that he had this strong feeling of alienation, of being an imposter, of being an outsider. And we have exactly the same rhyme as in the other poems, iambic pentameter, but unlike some of the other sonnets, it really isn't broken up by trochees or other elements of random rhyme and meter. It feels much more structured, so it feels very rehearsed, it feels like a dramatic performance almost, so that is perhaps why it feels much more steady. This is my play's last scene. Here heavens appoint, my pilgrimage's last mile, and my race, idly yet quickly run, has this last pace, my span's last inch, my minute's latest point. This is my play's last scene. In the play of life, this is my final moment on stage as I approach death. And lots of repetition in the pronoun my and mine here. It's very personal, very prideful almost. It's almost like I'm speaking, I'm on stage, this is my life, this is my stage, this is my performance. And it belonged to me. So it's almost like it's something truly grateful to be for, that it belonged to me. Well, I think that all of us really should be grateful that our life probably belongs to us, that we're the ones in control. So this is kind of what he's implying here, that this is my play's last scene. I have lived this life. It was not, God may have granted me that life, but I am the one who lived it. There's this element of pride and of confidence, at least for that reason here. He's not just the actor here. He's the writer, he's the director, and I think it also serves to gives that juxtaposition that here he may be the one in control, but up there he's not the one in control anymore, that it's God. And that maybe part of that fear and that anxiety that he feels is because he's relinquishing control. Death is something uncertain. Death is something over which we personally have no control. So that is perhaps why he feels so nervous about it. This is why he's trying to assert that this is my play, this is my life, that I have made decisions up to now. Again, we see that fear, that desperation later on of inadequacy. So we really have that sense of him gripping to life, that fear of control slipping away. And there's also the repetition of last, the emphasis on this being the final moments, that death is all consuming, and there's an attempt to assure himself that even if you're not quite sure what to come next, at least what will come in this life, these are the final moments. My span's last inch, my minute's latest point, my pilgrimage's last mile. So it presents life almost like a pilgrimage, almost like a journey where the final destination is God, that we all have to live because we're all paying that homage to God, that we're all appreciating his efforts in creating us. It's another very Christian idea that owe everything to God, which is perhaps why the Christian idea of seeing sinners as people who commit suicide because they ruin what they have given God, because it's our pilgrimage, it's our job to live out life until the end. And there's almost a sense of pride that he has actually completed that mile. And we have a semantic field of measurements here: span, inch. It keeps getting shorter and shorter: mile, pace, inch. It emphasizes that the final destination is near, and again it serves that as another reference to Hebrews 12:1, that let us run with perseverance the race set out before us. So that idea that we have seen in the first Holy Sonnet, that he really is coming closer and closer to the finish line, as well, as this is already the sixth sonnet, from the first to the sixth, it's still an idea that continues to haunt Donne, that continues to have a special importance for him. And it's interesting to know the syntax too. There's a mini caesura in the second line, it's a pause, and it's almost like the slight stumble. The pacing of the race: idly, yet quickly run. Idly, comma, slowly, without much effort, yet quickly run. So it's a little bit of a contrast, and in its onomatopoeic almost: idly, lazily, without much effort, yet quickly. So it's an oxymoron because it changes the pacing and it emphasizes that life seems to pass by so slowly. It seems like we have so much time, but really it has sped by us. My span, as if my last final lifespan, so the final distance, my minute's latest point. And we have this syntactic parallelism here, this life's last inch, minute's latest point. It seems quite simple with the iambic pentameter overall, another sonnet, but the syntax really adds another layer to the pacing. The changing of the syllable lengths really highlights that although the pace is different, the meter is constant. So there's an emphasis on life in its ups and downs, and also the never-ending passage of time. And gluttonous death will instantly unjoined my body and soul, and I shall sleep a space, but my ever-waking part shall see that face whose fear already shakes my every joint. Then we have a slight shift of topic with the conjunction and. And what comes next? Well, for Donne, what comes next is obviously death, gluttonous death, which will instantly unjoin my body and my soul. Death is presented as greedy because it will separate my mortal physical self and my soul. So I shall die, but my soul will live. Gluttony is one of those sins of overeating, of being able to eat more than you should because you can never control your urges. And it's like that death is greedy to eat my body, to let it decay. And so instantly my body and soul will decay, that it will instantly separate. And then he shall sleep a space. So I will sleep for a while, I will sleep for a bit, my ever-waking part, my soul that is always awake, and in existence I will see the face whose fear has already caused me to tremble with my body, my every joint. So the face of God. Really, death is gluttonous and greedy, and I have no respect for it, but what I do have respect for is the face that comes after, the face where I actually am scared to see, where I'm scared with every inch of my body that is left there behind by greedy little death, the face of God. Again, we have this association of sleep with death, presentation of death as rest, as nothing to be feared in comparison with God. Shall sleep a space, it has sibilance, it's soft, it's almost like harmless, it's almost like gentle, and then it highlights that death really is nothing compared to God, the fear of proving inadequate to never be purified. Joined rhymes with unjoined, and so the rhymes close off this constraint. It really highlights that he was unjoined by death and that he will be joined. So it's like a pun because joint is like bones, connections, and his physical body, foreshadowing that actually he will be made whole again by God's presence if he proves adequate. That ultimately there will be a unity as the body and soul will come together, as he will ultimately always come to God, as all souls reunite with God. Then as my soul to heaven her first seat takes flight, and earth-born body in the earth shall dwell, so fall my sins that all may have their right to wear their bread, and would press me to hell. Impute me righteous, thus purged of evil, for thus I leave the world, the flesh, the devil. Thus as my soul to heaven her first seat takes flight. It's this idea of everything going back to where it came from, continuing from this idea of unity. As my soul goes to heaven, likewise the body that was born of the earth shall dwell from the earth. Ashes tend to ashes. That idea of funeral, of being buried, dust to dust, return to where we came from. And seat is a word often used to describe heaven, so it's like a spot in heaven. So my soul will go back to her first seat, like from where my soul came, from that first seat, that's where it will come back to in its final moments, just like the body, earthborn body, will dwell in the earth. So fall my sins. From this my sins fall. They plummet. It's a contrast to takes flight. So all have a right to come to where they are bred. Like all things can go back to where they can come from and want to reconnect to their origin. Likewise, my sins will plummet down because my sins came from the devil. So they will go back to the devil where they came from. They would press me to hell. Impute me righteous. So impute, make me become righteous, make me worthy. When my sins fall to heaven, I will be righteous, I will be worthy, because they will return to where they came from, and I will be like I was before, pure, innocent, united in harmony with my body, my soul, and God. I will leave the scene. I will leave, thus I leave the world. I will leave the scene, I will leave this play, this human world. I will leave my body behind, and my soul will ascend to heaven. Well, hell, the assonance within the stanza of bread, press, hell, there's a repetition of similar vowel sounds, similar consonant sounds, but not necessarily alliteration. So there's a bit of playing with the language and the sound. Again, it's much like the actor trying to play with the performance, trying to like test the audience, get a feel for the crowd. He's trying to make a microcosm where he can try and make sense of things. So this holy sonnet serves as that expression of the actor testing the grounds as he prepares for his final journey, as he prepares for the moment after the performance, after that thunderous crowd of applause. So he's preparing for death, which will serve as that applause, that measure of seeing if he's adequate, and his sins will plummet to hell and his soul will go to heaven. So in this regard, it's a very interesting poem to analyze in terms of language and in terms of conceit. So thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next week.